Entirely. Gracias por unirse a nosotros a esta reunión esta noche. Vamos a empezar en unos momentos. Gracias. Okay, good evening. We appreciate your patience. We'll start very soon. Buenas noches, agradecemos su paciencia. Vamos a comenzar pronto. Okay, good evening again. Thank you for waiting. We'll start shortly. Gracias por unirse esta noche con nosotros. Empezaremos pronto. I sound like the recording at the airport or something. Byron, you're next. The moving walkway is ending. So I think we're waiting for Dr. McKnight. Estamos esperando que llegue la superintendenta. I am not sure if we should take advantage of this opportunity to show the video about translation. Estoy preguntando si no es una buena oportunidad para mostrarles un video para aquellas personas que necesitan interpretación.
Yeah, I agree. Let's cue the video and roll it. We can play it again once we get started.
Vamos a poner un video que les va a mostrar cómo tienen que hacer para ir al bloque de interpretación. Si nos hacen caso. Are we able to show the video regarding interpretation services? Okay, ahora viene el video. So we'll have the video now. El video acerca de cómo acceder a interpretación. Les agradecemos su paciencia. We thank you for your patience.
Language Interpretation. Interpretación de idiomas. Para acceder a la interpretación de idiomas dentro de la sesión de Zoom, haga clic en el icono de interpretación en los controles de Zoom. Luego, haga clic en el idioma deseado. Si está en un dispositivo móvil, puede que necesite hacer clic en los 3 puntos en la parte inferior de la pantalla para ver el icono de interpretación.
Bueno, voy a repetir en español lo que dijo el video. Si necesitan intérpretes, por favor, hay un icono en la parte de abajo de la pantalla con como un globo de la Tierra. Tienen que apretar ahí y presionar español. Y si tienen un teléfono, en la pantalla de Zoom van a ver 3 puntitos, van a presionar los 3 puntitos y ahí van a seleccionar interpretación. So I was just informing those who are non-English speakers about the interpretation steps, the steps that they need to take in order to get interpretation services. And I think that we're still waiting for Dr. McKnight.
That's correct.
So good evening, Byron and Diego. I can give you an update. She will be with us shortly.
She's here. She's
Oh,
here.
she's here. Yeah, she'll explain. But she had that horrible problem that we've all experienced when your computer decides to update and you just lose control of your computer. But I'll let Dr. McKnight explain.
And Brian Stockton looks more beautiful than ever, I have to say.
I have no idea why this is even coming up as Brian Stockton. But can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
We do. Very
All
good.
right. Here I am.
We're glad to have you, and we will we'll get right into the program to get our parents who have anxiously been looking forward to this conversation. So first, let me introduce myself, Byron Johns with the NAACP, and my colleague, Diego.
Uriburu with Identity and also with the Black and Brown Coalition.
And we are glad to have all of the parents. Dr. McKnight, we're thrilled that you're here, and all of your staff that are here to support. We're looking forward to this engagement. I want to provide some instructions first. The event is also live on MCPS's YouTube in English and in Spanish. I will also ask people, if you, during the conversation, please feel free to use the Q&A. There's a button at the end, at the bottom of your screen for question and answers. Use that to enter any questions or comments. We have moderators that will attempt to provide responses, and where we don't, we will be following up in a subsequent email conversation with that. In addition, please, we are asked all for respectful and maintaining proper decorum during this event. As you saw through the video, we have Spanish and English language interpretation available, and we also have American Sign Language. There is a real-time transcription. If you see the closed captions or show captions, that is available in multiple languages also. So that was a mouthful. Okay. Before we go to our local topic with our parents panels, Dr. McKnight, I want to get your comments and your thoughts about the general environment we find ourselves in. We're here toward the end of Black History Month, and educators are being fearful to teach Black history in America, let alone critical race theory, which is a law school program, but that's a different matter. There are a number of active legal challenges nationally and right here in Montgomery County to districts who attempt to fix past practices to be more inclusive in their educational opportunities for all. And we have a difficult environment coming out of multiple pandemics, increasing mental health challenges, drugs, violence, and just generally unraveling civility and civil discourse within our neighborhoods and within our schools. It leads to a very challenging learning environment. So as Montgomery County's first female superintendent, a mother, a person whose lived experiences are deeply rooted in African-American heritage, and an educational leader, one of the country's most diverse districts, we'd love your thoughts on this larger environment and the challenges facing education.
Thank you, Mr. Johns. And first of all, I want to say good evening to everyone. Thank you so much for your patience as I was trying to work through some technology challenges here. But nonetheless, I'm happy to be with everyone. Again, appreciate our parents being here. I know there's a long list of things to get done in the evening, but the fact that you took the time to commit and come together for an important conversation with the school system, myself and staff, and you as community members and parents, I really appreciate that. To the issues, Mr. Johns, that you mentioned, I think everything you just said is spot on. We're navigating a number of different tensions that are happening and playing out nationally, but many of those tensions are right here locally. And I think that's why it's important for us to stay astute to what's going on and to be involved so that we're never left out of the conversation. And most importantly, know that we need to have our voices present and advocate for the things that are impacting our children or the things that we want to be in place to support our children. You mentioned, many of them, there's been this movement around making sure that, we are unable to educate children truthfully about Black history in America. That's definitely a concern. We want our students to know their history. We want our students to acknowledge the successes in their history, because then that, of course, supports them feeling valued, feeling like they are a part of, much positivity that happens aside from some of the things that they see or may see resembling negativity in media and all of those pieces. So it's important. And the school system is a conduit that is used to be able to bring that information, that education together to make our students aware of who they are, how it represents their history, and most importantly, how they have to become advocates for their education and activists in many ways for the things that they believe in. And that starts with a good, solid education. And so that's why we're here. And that's why, as educators, and that's why we're here tonight having this conversation on these issues. Now, let's take some of these issues that have been impacting education, and then let's put on top of that a number of other things, factors that have been impacting our students in our communities, the pandemic being one. As a result of that, very challenging mental health needs that have arose, violence in the community, just civility overall in conversations and how we exercise tolerance to understanding opinions that are differing, but trying to get to a positive goal for our entire community. These are things that have been issues that we're constantly trying to teach our students so that they can become more involved and, most importantly, be able to get the education that they need to be able to lead here in Montgomery County as community members, community leaders in the future and beyond. So to me, as the superintendent of Montgomery County Public Schools, that means a lot, because that's how we put into our tagline of our job is to make sure our students are college, career, and community ready. Much of what I just talked about is how we build our students up so that they can be astute to being knowledgeable about what's happening in their community as young people, as students in our school system, so that they can become a part of many of the solutions. And I take that personally as an African-American female and serving in this role as superintendent. I feel like this is our opportunity to continue to work on many of the issues that we've talked about way too long. And because of the pandemic, we're in the space of reconstruction for education. I'm happy that I have the honor and the privilege to be able to lead the school system at definitely not an easy time, but wow, what an amazing time to be in leadership when everything was uprooted because of the pandemic. But we have an opportunity to create a pathway moving forward for a much positive impact for our students. So for that, despite the challenges, I'm excited, but I'm also very aware that I, as a superintendent, we as a school system can't do this alone. So the Board of Education is deeply committed to our students being successful, have worked with the NAACP, Identity, Black and Brown Coalition over time, and the Board of Education look forward to continuing to have that relationship and work on the issues that we see impacting our students over time. So with that, thank you so much for allowing me an opportunity to open the discussion up, and I look forward to us getting into more detail around these issues. I also want to acknowledge, Mr. Johns, that I have a number of staff members here. Unfortunately, I can't see them because of my technology, but I know they are here. And as we go through our conversation, particularly our panel tonight, I may very well refer to them to get into some of the details of our discussion.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. McKnight. Since we're late, I propose that we go directly to the first panel. Byron?
Yeah, we will. Okay, thank you, Dr. McKnight. And let me ask our first panelists, Wylea Chase and Flor Alfaro, to turn their cameras on. I want to frame this topic. This first panel is called Understanding Evidence of Learning Gaps and Removing Barriers to On-Grade Level Learning. For those that may not be familiar, Evidence of Learning is MCPS's student learning performance assessment model that uses multiple measures to answer two fundamental questions. Are our children learning, and are they learning enough? There are three types of measures. There's classroom grades, all of you, I'm sure, are familiar with. And there are both district and external assessments. And those are based on state and national standards. And they measure, are they learning enough? Are they learning on grade level? Based on the last data that we've seen, Black, Brown, low-income, and emerging multilingual learners are averaging 30 to 60 points below their white and Asian peers. Although these gaps between, the gaps between classroom scores and the district and external scores raise questions about, are they learning enough? Are they on grade level? So we invite our parents, first Wylea, to enter the conversation with Dr. McKnight.
Thanks, Byron. Welcome again, Dr. McKnight. Thank you for being here this evening. It's nice to see you. My name is Wylea Chase again. I am the Director of Operations and Community Engagement for the Black and Brown Coalition for Educational Equity and Excellence. So thank you everyone for being here this evening as we co-host this meeting with the NAACP Parent Council. Dr. McKnight, you heard Byron's lead in, and I'm gonna ask the question that a lot of Black and Brown and low-income parents are asking, but particularly Black and Brown parents. Why does this gap in learning in scores for our children versus their white counterparts and other races persist, right? Like, we know that our kids are smart. We know that they can learn, but why, even in the same class, in the same school, do these gaps persist? And do you have any data or something that can help to answer this question first? Because as you can imagine, it's very disheartening. It's disheartening for our children. It's disheartening for our parents. And not only why does this persist, but what is MCPS doing about it? And how can parents and caregivers support?
Thank you, Wylea. Good to see you too. And I forgot to mention this, Wylea, just for a moment, because I can't see anyone from my angle. I do have board members present tonight, and I do want to say that this conversation is really important, and the questions that you ask, I don't know which board members are here, but I did want to say to our parent community, they also want to hear the questions and to also be able to hear, responses or anything that comes up, because we work together on these issues that you bring forward to us tonight. So I forgot to mention that earlier and just wanted to make sure I do it. So I'm glad you started here with this question, because it's a critical one. And to me, it's one of the most important questions that we have to ask that guides our work every single day when we come into central office or we go into a school. And it really does get to 4 key questions that we've asked in the system and we continue to ask. And it's, are our children learning? Are they learning enough? How do we know it? If not, why not? And then what are we going to do about it, right? And so when we ask those questions, that means that we have to ask those questions as a central office. And so we do that by looking at the evidence of learning data. We have to ask those questions in our schools when our teachers get together and look at how students are performing in the classroom by grade level, by school. And these are the things that should actually lead to a school and a district, us seeing exactly where those gaps are. And it's through our evidence of learning framework that I say is the actual vehicle of accountability that says to us, we're actually meeting the mark, we're addressing the needs that we see all of our students have. And most importantly, what often does glare at us are many of those gaps that you just mentioned? Why are these gaps persisting in students' learning for our students of color, our students who are impacted by poverty, and what does that mean? So a few things that I want to say about this. First of all, back in September, we shared with the Board of Education some data from the end of the school year last year. It's been a very interesting time during COVID-19 because the way that we've always looked at data, we haven't collected all those sources of data. And of course, we all were anxious to continue to figure out how our students were impacted over the last 2 years. And when we looked at our end of the year data in evidence of learning in literacy specifically, and we look at it by race, and I just want to say, we look at it by race and ethnicity because that tells us who's meeting the targets and who's not. For our African-American students in grade 2 literacy, there was a rise in the percentage of students who met evidence of learning in mathematics, and we went up from 43% in 2021 to 50.7% in 2022, which was like a 7.2% increase. But while our goal is to be able to get all of our students to a proficient level, we look at that. And what's most important is that we have to then say, well, what happened in these circumstances? What happened in these schools that led to the success so that we can learn the story and be able to replicate that in our other schools? For our Hispanic students, particularly in grade 2 literacy, because this is, one of the areas that we looked at constantly, looking at the impact of literacy and mathematics on students during the pandemic. There was a rise in the percentage of students who met evidence of learning in math in 2021 when they were at 24% proficiency to 51% in 2022, which was, an increase of 26%. Now, I'm saying all of this to you because this is data that was presented for the end of last year, evidence of learning. Where are we now? And how does this come into context? Well, we're actually going to be sharing with the Board of Education evidence of learning update next month. And I'm going to ask you all to tune in because that's when we're going to talk about, all right, what is our most current data? And I think that's really important because this is the first year in which we've been able to implement many of our practices successfully, given the fact that our students have been in school and we haven't had the interruptions that we've had in the past. But Ms. Chase, I'm going to go back to what's going to make the difference in what we see in student learning. And I think there are a few things that we know are successful practices that we have to continue to commit to and have consistency in them. One, what are research-based, evidence-based instruction, curriculum, instruction, types of support that we have found to be successful for our students? How do we know that? How are we evaluating our programs to continue to replicate those? And that's exactly what we're doing. Science of reading is a good example, which is why I can say we've been able to sustain some evidence for our students, particularly our students of color during the pandemic, because we made a big investment in science of reading literacy in the district last year, because we spent the time to say nationally, even beyond Montgomery County, what have we learned from students across the nation that are successful curriculum that meets our students' needs. And that's an example of one of them. So that's one area. The second I'll say is the continued investment of our staff, knowing our students, understanding their needs, and still holding them to high expectations as they support them. When our staff work with our students, that means when you interact with a student, what are your beliefs about that student? What are your beliefs about what they can do? And how does that come across in how you teach and support them? So that's why you also hear our investment in professional learning to be able to make an impact on the data that we see to close the very gaps that you're speaking of.
I appreciate that response, Dr. McKnight, but I'll just say, and I know that we have to keep it short and tight because we have to get to the other parts of the program, but just for a point of clarification, you mentioned the evidence of learning data. And so while there, you point to some improvements in literacy, for example, for Black students, then I would say that their white counterparts have grown exponentially, even more, right? And so I guess I'm still looking for a little bit of clarification on behalf of, our community as to why that persists, right? And maybe it's not something we can get into right now because, again, we're short on time, but parents are asking, why does this gap persist in the same classroom as their white counterparts for our Black children that we know are smart and we know can learn?
Mm-hmm.
But
So Walia, I know we're short on time, but I think this is one worth getting into. So it's interesting. I was having another press conference today, and I said, if I could snap my finger and say we have a solution to this, I would absolutely do this. So the gaps that we're talking about in students learning, I mean, I would love to say I have the answer to exactly what it is and how we can fix it and how we can fix it quickly. But you and I both know we can look at MCPS data for decades. We can pull any school system, quite frankly, I'll venture to say nationally for several decades and see the very gaps that we're talking about. Now, I say that to say, this is not at all that I don't believe that this is a problem that we cannot fix. I wouldn't be sitting here in the seat if I did not believe that. But what I am saying is we have to acknowledge that this is a part of an adaptive challenge. And that means when we talk about what we're doing to support our students, we have to work from a perspective of, in Montgomery County, the 25,000 employees that work with the 161,000 students that we serve. And so that means is that translates into every single classroom in the system, being very clear about how it is that you teach our students, how it is that you build relationships with the families, how is it that you send confirming messages to them? How do I best know and understand my curriculum and show a commitment to their learning in the classroom and in every interaction to make sure that they're successful? And I believe in the things that I said, because it is going to take steps like spending the time with the staff so that they understand who their students are and knowing how to teach them that is going to get us there. And so that means as we continue to work on this, I know that there are things that work. I mean, for instance, I'll tell you, I looked at, I was just sharing with a team this morning, there's a school that we have in Montgomery County. I won't name the school, but it's a school that represents many of our students who are Black and brown. It has a farms rate of 72%. And I was looking at the school's data, and the data from that school around literacy and mathematics from recent data was showing that that school was actually the students in kindergarten, first and second grade, according to their data, students who were impacted by free and reduced meals, and our Hispanic students particularly in that school were passing MCPS average by minimum 10% in some areas, 20% in others. So see, when I see that, that says to me, it's possible. And if it's happening at that one school, then we have to replicate what's happening there, get the story of that school, and figure out how we replicate that across the system. So I believe the answers to some of what we're talking about is here, and it's actually happening in some of our schools. Our job is to be able to look at that data, share it with our community so that they can actually see what we're doing and how this data is actually making an impact on our students, and particularly our students who we know we owe it to make sure that they are excelling as their peers are in their classrooms. And I think that's the most confirming message we can share with them.
On to the next one. So that
absolutely.
I've been waiting. So I'm just gonna, before I introduce Flor Alfaro, who's gonna ask a question, I'm gonna frame it a little bit. I'm gonna talk about ESOL. I know there's a new name, but the parents know it by ESOL. There's around 30,000 ESOL students in the system. The ESOL population has the highest dropout rates in MCPS, and it has been without a permanent steady leader since June of last year. And we are very concerned that at least the community does not see a plan, a strategic plan about how we're going to get out of that, of the difficulty that the ESOL population is enduring. And I'm going to pass it on to Flor to ask the question. I will acknowledge Brenda Wolf, the Board of Education member, and Grace Rivera, who are watching this on the MCPS's YouTube channel. Flor.
Good evening. My name is Flor Alfaro. I'm a former MCPS student and currently an identity program manager for elementary and middle school programs. Emerging multicultural learners and Latino and Latina students lag MCPS overall students' graduation rates by more than 35 points. What unique challenges face these students, and how does MCPS plan to address this widening gap? Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. So our ESOL students, as Diego said, we often refer to our students also as emergent multilingual learners. So if I say EML, we're still talking about the same students, but another term that we use. There are students who are an increasing population in our county. And because we've acknowledged that this is an increasing population of students coming into our county, we've been very thoughtful about what initiatives do we need to have in place to bring these students in, to address their needs, to help them feel a part of the community of Montgomery County Public Schools, to help them feel a part of the community that they become a part of when they go into our schools. And so I'll talk a little bit about a few things that we've done to support them. So let's start with EML services that we have. We provide services to those students who are ELLs, and essentially what we do is we design help for them in attaining English language proficiency. And we do that so that these students can be able to access grade level information data through direct instruction so that they are able to still be exposed to the standards that we're teaching other students, but they are able to access that through small group instruction and classroom support. So the goal is to be able to still have them engage with the students and in the classrooms and having the support of the students, but designing those other additional interventions and support structures for them to be successful, more of the small group and one-on-one support. In the curriculum, you know, we had a comprehensive EML curriculum that really does align to state standards, and it's designed to meet the needs of our ELL students. The curriculum focuses on, of course, building students' language skills, as well as how those language skills fit into the content that they're learning in the other subjects. And it's really important for us to expose them to that in the other subjects, because as our emergent multilingual learners come into the fold of our school system, we want to not only support them in learning their language, but also be able to identify what are their areas of interest, how are they being exposed to all of the other courses, so that we're not finding out late, so we can actually direct them into the pathways to be able to take advantage of all the systems that exist in Montgomery County Public Schools. I'll also talk about staffing. We've employed EML staff members who are trained to work specifically with ELL students. And these staff members, you know, many of you, and being a former student in Montgomery County, I know these positions are not new ones to you, but our ESOL teachers, really supporting them and finding out from them and what it is that they need within their classrooms, that they help many students transition within the classroom, providing more instructional assistance we've been able to provide in those classrooms, and coordinators who actually understand all of the things that have to be taken into consideration as we help ELLs transform into to different school cultures as they come into the folds of Montgomery County Public Schools, to be able to provide them the support that they need. So really, I consider that like a wraparound. We also have been focused on family engagement differently. We recognize the importance of family engagement, and we also know that we can't take for granted that because our families come and enroll their students in schools, that they have all the tools that they need to help navigate this large, big system that we know and have heard from many of our parents can be difficult to navigate. So we provide resources and support to help families. Yes.
I'm sorry. The next panel is a little bit about that, the next two panels. And
you want me to hold?
Yes, I think it's a great segue to the next one.
Okay.
The next panel is called Failing to Connect, when great programs, interventions, and efforts don't reach our kids. MCPS has a history of offering wonderful educational, social, and engagement opportunities to its families. But unfortunately, as it relates to Black and Brown students and families, these efforts for decades have not reached them well. So what we have done now is we're going to change the situation. The parents really want you to hear some of the next two panels. The parents have wanted you, Dr. McKnight, and the board members who are present and your staff to listen to what they are experiencing. So with that, I'm going to pass it to the next panelist, Marisa, and we'll be doing in English and Spanish. There will be interpretation services who are going to talk about their experiences and the difficulties they have accessing services that MCPS offers. But if you don't get it, you don't get it. So I'm going to pass it on to Marisa.
Viviana.
Viviana, sorry, we changed the panelists. Viviana, perdón.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Voy a hablar en representación de Marisa, ella está enferma.
I'm going to
Mi
talk
nombre es Marisa Walkris, soy mamá de una niña en la escuela elementaria.
My name is
He querido
Viviana.
que mi hija tome cursos avanzados, pero
I
mi
would like
experiencia ha sido un poco
my daughter to take
frustrante porque
advanced courses,
encuentro
but
que el
in my
método utilizado por
experience,
parte de los maestros.
Viviana, le voy a pedir que hable una oración o dos y pare, así el intérprete puede interpretar.
Ok, está bien.
Okay, so
Okay,
I asked
thank
you to say one or two sentences so the interpreter can interpret without us hearing both voices.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mi nombre es Marisa Walkris, soy mamá
My
de una
name is
niña en la
Marisa
escuela
Walkris.
elementaria. He querido que mi hija tome cursos avanzados,
I
pero
would
mi experiencia ha sido un poco frustrante porque encuentro que el método utilizado por parte de los maestros e incluso de
Viviana, acuérdese de parar. Acuérdese de parar un poquito. Entonces, Stephen, are you able to interpret that in a summary, or do you want me to do it?
I can summarize.
Okay, él va a dar un resumen y después sigue, pero acuérdese de pausar, okay?
Listo.
My daughter's been in elementary school, and she's wanted to take, and I have wanted her to take advanced courses, but I've noticed that the methods that they've been using have not been useful.
Okay, Viviana.
Reduce la posibilidad de que los estudiantes puedan acceder a estas clases.
It reduces the possibilities that students can access these classes.
Primero, no hay suficiente información para que los padres sepan de qué se tratan estos cursos.
There's not enough information for the parents to understand what these courses are about.
Tampoco hay suficiente información para que los padres podamos ayudar a nuestros hijos en la preparación para estos exámenes.
Also, there's not enough information for the parents for them to be able to help their children to prepare for these tests.
Como bien se sabe, todo examen requiere un periodo de preparación.
As we all know that every test takes a period of preparation.
La única comunicación que recibimos antes de que se tomen estos exámenes es que los niños deben estar bien descansados.
The only communication we receive before the children take these tests is that they should be well rested.
Yo he tenido que pedir libros de matemáticas para que mi hija pueda practicar y prepararse para el examen.
I've had to ask for math books so that my daughter would be able to prepare and be ready for these tests.
Segundo, la forma en que se comunican los resultados de estos exámenes es confusa y a veces descalificante hacia las capacidades de los niños.
And second, the way that the test results for these tests are communicated are confusing, and they can leave out how the child has done.
Creando en ellos conceptos equivocados de su desempeño para lograr lo que se proponen.
For them to be able to believe in these concepts of their performance, of how they do.
Pregunto, ¿cómo puede una persona lograr un buen resultado en un examen si no está preparado con anticipación?
My question is, how can a person do well on one of these if they are not well prepared?
Mi siguiente pregunta, ¿cómo podrían involucrar a los padres en este proceso, permitiendo que tengamos acceso a los libros de matemáticas y lectura para trabajar desde casa con nuestros hijos?
My next question is, how can we involve the parents and give them access to books on mathematics and reading for them to be able to prepare at home?
Voy a continuar. Tomar estas clases
I'll continue.
les da la oportunidad a nuestros hijos de crear un camino exitoso académicamente para lograr mejores oportunidades después de la graduación.
I'll continue. Taking these classes will give our children the opportunity for a successful path, academically speaking, and better opportunities after graduation.
Lamentablemente, esto no se comunica de manera adecuada y lo poco que llegamos a conocer sobre estos temas a través de otros padres de familia en lugar de algún recurso escolar.
these topics are not communicated appropriately, and we end up learning about these topics from other families instead of from a source from the school system.
Hoy no solo estoy hablando por mí, estoy hablando por padres, incluso de niños con edades inferiores a los 4 años, con capacidades y ya preparados.
Today, I'm not talking just for myself, but for parents with children even younger than 4 years old, with difficulty with learning.
Pero que al ser examinados por alguna razón, también son rechazados para iniciar con el programa de Head Start.
But for being assessed for some reason, then they are turned away from programs like Head Start.
Toda la información que permita que nuestros hijos estén mejor preparados para poder aplicar a más oportunidades académicas.
All the information that would allow our children to be better prepared for more opportunities.
Debería ser una prioridad dentro de los planes inmediatos del sistema escolar. Gracias.
It should be a priority for the school system. Thank you.
Thank you, Viviana. Tia?
Good evening. From the very beginning of his freshman year, my son complained that his classes were too easy, especially his math class. I assured him that his teachers were just easing him into high school, but the complaints continued through the entire semester. Instead of meeting my son where he was and pushing him further, my son's teacher gave him extra packets to do, basically busy work. My son completed the packets, but in addition, he used his computer to start working through the MCPS curriculum that is posted online. This in turn created another problem. You see, when it was time to register for 10th grade, my son came to me panicked because he was slated to take pre-calculus, but he felt confident that he already knew the material. That's what he had been studying online. Now, he was concerned that he was going to be bored again moving into his sophomore year. I encouraged him to advocate for himself, but he ran into a solid brick wall. No one listened to him. Instead, he was told to slow down. He was told that he could not and would not be given a placement test to gauge his current knowledge of the math curriculum. He was told that working ahead was not encouraged because students need to take math all 4 years of high school and that he was running out of class options. MCPS is highly rated. It's ranked in the top 20% of Maryland schools. The messages that my son received cannot possibly be the messages that MCPS wants to send to the Black and Brown students that are on or above level. All students should be met where they are and provided support and challenges to further their growth. I did what I needed to do to ensure my son received the rigor he craved, but it was a very difficult task. How can MCPS lessen the hurdles and make excellence for all more attainable?
Thank you very much, Tia. Delmi? Delmi, are you speaking in español o en inglés?
English.
Okay, perfect. Vamos.
Good evening. My name is Delmi Villegas. I have 3 kids in MCPS, 4th, 6th, and 9th grade. My family is really school-oriented. We believe education is the best gift we can give to our kids. We're always looking for areas that can improve the overall learning. We look for their talents and strengths. Our kids are the first generation here in USA. We're learning to navigate the school system. It's really difficult and frustrating. Frustrating when you cannot find the right pathway for your kids to succeed. Even before my kids started school, I had heard about the elementary school magnet program from a friend. She told me about the good programs there were for your kids, especially if they are eager and curious to learning. My son started an elementary magnet program in 1st grade. The commute was exhausting for him. It was hard for our family to coordinate drop off and pick up from the bus stop. But because he loved the school, we continued to sacrifice so he could participate in the program. He kept pushing himself to be the best, especially in math classes. He developed a love for math and his confidence in the subject soared. When we transitioned to middle school, we decided to enroll him in the middle school magnet program, since we believed this school was a good fit for him, providing him with a challenging classes and academically oriented peers. But due to transportation barriers, we were not able to continue to send him. We had to make the hard choice to send him back to our home middle school. And even though we doubt the rigor of the class there, we decided to give it a try because it was the only choice we were given. Now, science is the class where he has issue at this moment. Since the first day of class, he requested a class change as he thought the class was too easy. And every time he asks the teacher a question, she gets mad. He requested several times to be moved, but since it was not an elective class, he cannot move. We believe all the effort we have made throughout the years have gone to the drain since he is not getting the tools necessary to challenge himself. We believe a good classroom fit is helpful for kids who want to learn and think differently. But when things aren't going well at school, it affects your child's ability to learn, their self-esteem, and willingness to go to school. Having had roadblocks every time we try to find ways to help my son receive accelerated learning at his home school has been very disappointing. Luckily, last week, I attended a meeting with central office staff who are now helping my son get what he needs. This should have happened from the beginning. It should not have happened because I happened to attend a meeting and someone from the central office decided to help. The help should exist in our school. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Delmi. Leona, and then since we are running out of time, Dr. McKnight, we're going to ask you to listen to the next panel too, and then give us some final comments. But Leona, the floor is yours.
Good evening. When we moved to Montgomery County, my children were coming from an English language international school in China, and our entire transition to MCPS was, in a word, horrendous. The most egregious example was my oldest son's math course placement. I shared test scores, grades, copies of the curriculum, and textbook information from his prior school to demonstrate that he had successfully completed the typical course for his grade and therefore needed to be in a more advanced math class. Not only did the school refuse to place him in an appropriate class, they also refused to test him as I requested in order to ensure accurate placement. As a native English speaker, he was required to go to the school in the summer for ESOL testing. And afterwards, the person conducting the test asked me why he was even being tested. They could have tested him for math the same day, but instead he was placed in a class covering material he had done over 2 years prior. Despite repeated calls and emails of me informing them that he was in the wrong class, they just reminded me that they did not have MCPS data and that we would have to wait. Over a month into the school year, when he completed his classwork while his teacher was still explaining the material to the class, the teacher became so incensed that he did not follow her schedule and wait until she finished instruction to start classwork that she ripped up his completed work in front of the entire class. At that point, he walked out of the classroom and refused to return. When the school called me to inform me of this incident, where they admitted that the teacher had ripped up his work simply for working ahead, but wanted him to return to class, honestly, I was appalled. It was then that I informed the school there was no circumstance under which a teacher should rip up a student's work, ever. And that this was, in fact, their fault, and that I would need to escalate to anyone and everyone that would listen. He was then tested about a week and a half later. He scored in the 99th percentile, and he was immediately moved to the higher class, but there was not even so much as an apology. And I do wonder if I had not been so vocal and his teacher so blatantly unprofessional and disrespectful, if the move would have ever even occurred. Unfortunately, the impact of this experience is still evident in my son's approach to the school system, his feelings about his math classes, and even his overall mental health, as well as our trust and an impression of the Montgomery County Public Schools. Unfortunately, we're also realizing that this experience is not uncommon, And so we want to know, what do we do? What are the next steps? And where do we go from here?
Thank you, Leona, and everyone else. Again, I think that the testimonies are very emotionally charged. There are other parents that have been waiting to also talk about the next topic, so I'm going to transfer it to Byron, Wailia, sorry, who's going to lead the third panel, and then we have caught up with time, I think, and then we'll have time for Dr. McKnight to talk about the two panel sessions. Okay, Wailia.
Thanks, Diego. So Dr. McKnight, this is a hard one. So this panel session is entitled, Let's Keep Our Communities Safe, Interrupting Prejudice, Hate, Bias, and Violence in Schools. So we'll see here that many things can be true at the same time. So while it's true that MCPS has a plan of action to address the incidents that are about to be shared, building off current plans of action, it's also true that for the Black and Brown and low-income communities in particular, it feels like watching grass grow, blade by painful blade. It's either too slow, ineffective, or just non-existent in many cases. The Black and Brown Coalition, in partnership and collaboration with Identity Youth and the NAACP Parents Council, convened a meeting with the county executive and MCPS on the mental health needs of the community. More specifically, we wanted the county executive and MCPS to hear directly from our Black and Brown and low-income families, students and their parents and caregivers about the severity of the mental health and violence, including but not limited to bullying, psychological, sexual, and physical incidents, which seem to be an epidemic affecting our students, which has been exacerbated by COVID-19. We had 10 parents bravely share their stories in person of violence and bullying towards their children, and the inadequate and little to no response from MCPS. Their sharing was painful in retelling for the parents, and painful to those of us who were listening. There were many more parents who wanted to share, but due to fear of negative repercussions for their children in their home schools, they didn't. There were over 40 people in the room and over 90 via Zoom. There have been many more instances since that November 9th meeting, including multiple incidents and meetings to address anti-Black, anti-Asian, anti-Muslim, anti-LGBTQ+, anti-Semitic hates, and on, which of course require immediate attention, and rightfully so. However, here we are 4+ months later, and the only concrete thing we have to share with those families is a listening session, which is going to happen on March 1st. So Dr. McKnight, we right now have 4 parents and caregivers on this panel who will share theirs and their children's unfortunate and painful lived experiences with bullying, racism, violence, and unsafe conditions. Parents, we invite you to turn your cameras on. Martina, you can feel free to start.
Thanks, Wailia. For some reason, I don't know why I thought I was going second. Apologies. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to offer a window into some of the incidents that continue to impact Darnestown Elementary School. My name is Martina Fongen, and I'm the co-parent rep alongside Dr. Panin Humphrey, who's on the call as well, and really a solid multiracial and diverse community of people who are committed to making DES a safe community that we're all proud of. I just want to quickly call out Byron and Wailia because we could not and would not be here or have the traction that we have without them. They've been steadfast, not only in their commitment to supporting systemic change, but to rolling up their sleeves and really working with us to do the actual work. And I also want to thank you, Dr. McKnight, because I kind of bumped into you at the January 17th board meeting, and you listened so intently and so empathetically. And after the discussion, we felt confident that MCPS would really work in lockstep with us. Me and my friends decided to go. I'm getting some interference. Is that on my side, or does everyone hear that? Let me tell y'all, when I say it took effort to bring our stuff for the food. Is everyone else hearing that?
We did, but you can go on. Sorry, Martina.
Sorry, I got distracted. Sorry. Okay, thank you. So just want to thank you and just underscore how grateful we are that you had that conversation with us. And just after that happened, just a series of events flowed out of that, which have been extremely helpful. So just to set the table and contextualize my comments, I want to acknowledge that there are really two interconnected themes here, really institutionalizing anti-racism efforts across MCPS, but also just more immediately and more practically, systematically implementing the policies that are already in place to address these incidents. As you know, there have been ongoing issues of hate bias and prejudice, including the written N-word, the physical assault of Black and Brown kids, and others that have been presented to MCPS and escalated beyond the school. So my goal and our goal collectively today is to work with you in solidarity to move the needle, because there is still considerable work to do. So I'm very plugged into the community in Darnestown. It's a place I love. I've been there since my daughter started kindergarten. I've got 2 kids at Darnestown Elementary School, and I've really leveraged my relationships and my commitment to real change to ask people who I know to show up, show their very personal and vulnerable stories. And these stories have reached the highest levels. We recently had a community meeting where several caregivers shared very painful, very uncomfortable stories about their different experiences. But most importantly, within this community meeting, there were very clear asks. And these include that MCPS abides by the established policies that are already in place and processes to address and remediate these incidents that have happened and that continue to happen, including hate bias, bullying, intimidation, and really looking at both the individual and the systemic levels. And we think, and I think this is very clear, that one of the biggest challenges here is inconsistent application of what the policies are, because I know that there's really a dearth of knowledge, and both staff and teachers do not understand a lot of the policies. So therefore, it's not that they're being malicious, but there's a concern about leaning into some of these conversations because they don't know what the policies are. And there's really a capacity building and just a staff sensitization issue that needs to be addressed and can be addressed very like quickly. And it's something that we can do now as we, are doing more systemic change as well. So what does this look like? From our perspective, it really is a systematic, multi-pronged approach that works at both the caregiver, student, teacher, staff, and community levels. And we heard, especially at this most recent community meeting, that teachers and staff are clamoring for just the tools to understand and address these issues. And these are things that we can do very practically. And we've also seen that MCPS and Darnestown, by extension, we tend to treat a lot of these incidents as sort of one-off incidents, really disentangling them from the broader systemic problems. But we know that these are inextricably linked, and we've got to treat them as such. And we applaud you in your most recent communication on that really categorically called out anti-Semitism, as we all should. And we think that a proportionate commitment and message, one that really communicates that we are in solidarity with Black and Brown people and others who who are experiencing these biases, are also called out. From my perspective, that those two are so interconnected, and they shouldn't be separated. We really need to sort of look at these biases as a whole and just very clearly convey that there is no tolerance for them. So just to sum up, we want clear communications and transparency. We know that community members in Darnestown have conveyed that there's a lot of confusion around the messaging that's come out. And if you look at just some of the lessons that we've learned from Lakelands, for example, I don't have any middle school kids, but we talk in the community, and I've seen how in very clear terms, a lot of the messages that come out of Lakelands, they immediately report what the issues are. They immediately report what the actions are that are being taken. And this sends a very clear message to the community that this is what's happening. In the absence of this information and in the absence of really clear messaging and ambiguity, anxiety and just not knowing it really motivates people to create their own narratives, and it becomes an us versus them. And that is what we've seen in Darmstown. We've got camps of people who don't really understand what's happening with other groups of people, and one hand is really not talking to the other. So there's a real need for this transparent and consistent communication from MCPS and Darmstown. And that shouldn't be tied to an individual. There really needs to be a system-wide approach so that everyone is clear on what the messaging should be, when it goes out, what the process is, what the actions are. So it's just clear and it's fair. And so in addition, oh my goodness, my phone is ringing. Okay, that's stopped. In addition, we received a strategic plan, an action plan, sort of following up a number of the incidents that have taken place that we've escalated to the highest levels. But what we really want to see and what we need to be successful is to have very clear metrics for success. What does success look like? And we need to know that within these strategic plans and supporting documents, that there are parental caregiver voices and student input that is both solicited and reflected in both the development of and the dissemination of these strategies, right? We need to come together as a community, and everyone has to play a part in that. Shouldn't be thrust on the community. We need to really incorporate those voices to make sure that we all are a part of creating the response. And just overall, this communication issue is really important. We need clear communication with the community about what the implemented activity should be, what the desired behaviors are, and what the impacts are. And beyond what was articulated in this strategic plan that we received, we need a long-term vision and strategy that goes beyond the month of May, like something that really articulates what is the vision. If we're committed to anti-racism and working within this framework, what does that look like? What does it look like on a day-to-day? How do we operationalize it? And we all know that if you can't measure it, it doesn't move. If these measurements and these policies are not owned by anyone within Darmstown or within other schools, if it's everyone's responsibility, it's no one's responsibility. So it's hard to change behavior towards the desired outcomes if we don't have that clear sort of plan in place. And finally, we want a mapping of the activities and outcomes that were laid out in the strategic plan and the corresponding measures of success. So if we do this, like the current state, what does that mean? Where will that get us, and what are our plans? And that should be clear to everyone. And just to close, I really want to just reiterate our willingness and eagerness to show up and work with you as true partners, and to work with the entire Darmstown community and the MCS community to really sort of become the anti-racist school and system that you envision. And we're here in lockstep with you.
Thank you so much, Martina. Ms. Soto?
Delmi, no te logramos oír. ¿Puedes acercarte a tu teléfono, por favor? Gracias.
Hola, soy Brenda Soto. Soy mamá de 4 niños. Una niña en la escuela elemental y otro niño en la escuela intermedia.
Hi, my name is Brenda Soto. I have 4 children, 1 in elementary and 2 in middle.
Siempre me he preocupado por el bienestar de mis hijos. Soy una mamá muy presente en la vida de ellos.
I've always been worried about the well-being of my children. I've always been a very present mother.
Participando activamente en las escuelas e involucrándome en la educación. Hoy quiero compartir la historia de mi hijo mayor de 7 años, que está en el grado 7.
Perdón, ¿puede repetir la edad?
De mi hijo mayor que está en el grado 7º.
Always participating actively in the education of my children. I'd like to tell you the story of my oldest child who's in grade 7.
Él enfrentó una situación de bullying el año pasado.
He suffered a bullying situation last year.
Por acusado por un niño de su escuela que llegó al límite de perseguirlo y amenazarlo con un cuchillo.
He was attacked by a child from his school, and it got so bad that he was chased and threatened with a knife.
Yo notaba a mi hijo preocupado, asustado a la hora de ir a la escuela, pero él no me decía nada de lo que pasaba.
I could tell that my son was worried and scared when it was time to go to school, but he didn't tell me anything about this.
La situación llegó al límite cuando un compañero de mi hijo fue golpeado con un brass knuckles saliendo del baño y tuvo que ser llevado al hospital.
The situation got out of hand when another child from the school, my son's school, was hit with brass knuckles when he was coming out of the bathroom.
Ese mismo día nos enteramos que la golpiza era para mi hijo, pero por equivocación golpeó al otro estudiante.
That day, we learned that the attack was actually meant for my son, but it occurred this way because the child was mistook the other child for my son.
También supimos que la escuela había encontrado el cuchillo en el locker del niño acosador.
We also learned that the school had found the knife in the locker of the child that was attacking the other child.
Ante esta situación hicimos una cita para hablar con el director. Le pedimos que nos apoyara y nos garantizara seguridad para nuestro hijo.
That day, we made an appointment to talk with the principal to ask him to support and to guarantee the safety of our child.
Y nosotros nos encargábamos de la seguridad de él fuera del horario escolar.
And then we ensured that he was safe when he was outside of school.
Sin embargo, su respuesta fue que él no podía garantizar seguridad para él.
Although his answer was that he could not guarantee his safety.
Pues la escuela recibía diario más de 700 niños y nos sugirió cambiar a nuestro hijo a otra escuela.
The school has 700 children, and they couldn't move my child to another school.
Lo que no entiendo es que si mi hijo fue la víctima del odio, ¿por qué tendría yo que cambiarlo de la escuela?
No, I just want to clarify that it was that they recommended that her son be moved to a different school, and now she's saying that why should her son, who's the victim, be the one who is being required to move school? Sorry.
Thank you, Diego.
Pasaron los días y no cambió nada. El niño continuó yendo a la escuela con mucho miedo.
And so the days passed, and my son continued being afraid of going to school.
Por fortuna, yo asisto a un café semanal organizado por la escuela elemental donde va mi hija. Fue ahí donde recibí orientación.
Fortunately, I attend a weekly cafe at the elementary school of my daughter, and it was here that I received information and orientation.
Para poder apoyar a mi hijo, gracias a la intervención de ellos y su orientación, el niño que amenazaba a mi hijo fue retirado de la escuela.
And to be able to support my son, it's thanks to these people at this cafe that gave me this information and orientation. And thankfully, this child that was bullying my child was taken out of the school.
Pero lamentablemente siguió persiguiendo y acosando a mi hijo fuera fuera de ella. Buscamos apoyo a la policía del condado a hacer un caso donde había agresión física y amenaza con cuchillo.
But the sad part is that
Steven, I can help you. The sad part is that although he's no longer at the school,
he continues to he continues to follow my son and to bully him. I'm sorry. Could you help me out, Diego?
Yes, and bully him outside of school. So Ms. Soto has had to call the police. ¿Y la policía la ayudó, Brenda, o no?
La policía no me ayudó porque me pedían las pruebas de los videos y a lo cual la escuela no me lo dio.
Okay, so the police did not help her because they were asking for proof. They wanted to see the videos of what happened in the school, but the schools did not share the videos. Okay, Steven, is yours now.
Gracias.
Brenda, ¿ya está?
Ya solo eso.
Muchas gracias, Brenda. Muchas gracias. Gracias. Walia, who's next?
Ricky. Thank you so much, Ms. Soto.
Gracias, Brenda.
Thank you. Good evening, Dr. McKnight. I'm talking about school safety, and school safety and security are tricky things to talk about because when we discuss safety and security, we're talking about an intangible feeling. But most people generally expect the school district to deploy a mixture of data-backed policies and tangible tactics to manifest a protective sense of monitoring and oversight. MCPS has had a number of issues recently that have jarred many parents, staff, and students' perception of school safety. There is rampant drug use going on at the high school level, and we've seen a concerning increase in threats, fights, and physical violence. I could point to specific schools and incidents, but that's not the point because these issues are system-wide and across the board. One significant vulnerability has been around the bathrooms. The variety of safety incidents that happen in MCPS high school bathrooms include fights, some of which involve guns and other weapons, hate-based threats, robberies, and substance use and dealing. I recently testified to the school board about this glaring problem. Why hasn't MCPS put out a clear short-term and long-term response to the bathroom safety issue with immediate next steps with regard to updates to security protocols and disciplinary consequences for students who repeatedly make the learning environment unsafe? Since I testified at the board, and even before I did, I've been told that MCPS is working on a plan that is forthcoming. But there's been no clarity on when or to what extent this plan will be deployed. This is in stark contrast to the immediate and real-time tiered response MCPS implemented after the fight that broke out at the Northwest Gaithersburg football game in September. So I'm wondering, what gives? What is your plan in the near term and the long term to rebuild trust and improve the diminished perception parents and students have on the safety and security of MCPS schools? Thank you.
So do we have one more panelist?
We were supposed to, but I don't think that we do.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
So Dr. McKnight, people are eager to hear from you about the two heart-wrenching issues. One is support for their children's education, including accelerated learning, and then these issues of bullying, violence, insecurity that are scaring families to death. So the floor is yours, and I know we don't have all night, but at least if you could share your feelings and what you hoped to do with this information. Thank you.
Before we do, Dr. McKnight, we just ask if it's ask the indulgence of any of our guests and attendees. If you can stay a little past, I know we said we were ending at 8. We want to try to extend a little so that Dr. McKnight can respond. So please stay if you can. We will extend the end time.
So thank you for one, asking us to extend. I think it's an important conversation that we're having tonight. And 2, I want to thank all of the panelists for sharing the different accounts. It's important for the Board of Education to hear those accounts, for me to hear those accounts, and for the staff to hear those accounts. As I listen to every experience that was shared tonight, you know, when it, you know, just to name a few, like Tia's testimony, you know, was or her experience was about, you know, essentially classes being too easy and her child not being challenged. Delmi, you know, spoke about, you know, being able to meet the students' needs and why it being so hard to access what that is. Leona spoke about the process in which a student who, you know, was prepared to be challenged, the process got in the way of that happening so that the student could access the education that would be challenging them for them to continue to be engaged. And I mean, as I heard each of those, you know, I go back to what I said at the very beginning of our conversation. Every time I heard one of those, I spoke about there was one adult or several adults who were involved in communication with the families, communicating directly with the student, that sent messages through the interactions that apparently, you know, clearly did not meet the needs of the student or the family in these situations. And so when I answered the first question that was asked of me this evening about what are we going to do about these gaps, this is an example of what I'm saying, which is we have to commit to work with all of the adults to be able to make these changes so that when students do come in and, you know, they are expressing that, you know, they are prepared, beyond prepared for what the experience is in the classroom, that a mindset of low expectations does not get in the way of them recommending the student to be in the right space and us ultimately providing the students with what the needs are. And we literally cannot fix that until we fix the mindsets of the people. And as you all know, this is not simplistic or easy work, but it is necessary work. Ms. Martina, you know, as you were sharing through the processes, and of course I was very familiar with some of the experiences that you were speaking to, and I couldn't agree with you more when you said, you know, we have to have a long-term vision and a strategy of how we're going to get there. I fall back on our anti-racist audit. That was a proactive measure that we put in place to say, you know what, we're tired of looking at our data being predictable. We're tired of implementing systems, going back to even, you know, evaluating systems of how do we go about looking at students and the values they come into our community with, especially if they're international students, and how do those structures that may have been there remain relevant and valuable to every individual student's experience. And us taking the proactive step to implement the audit was to get to that. And Ms. Martinez, as you said, the long-term vision and strategy is the actual anti-racist audit action plan, which is exactly what we're working on right now with you and members of our community, and engaging and soliciting that involvement, because we in isolation as a system actually don't want to say we have all the answers. I believe if we had all the answers, we wouldn't hear some of the accounts that we were just listening to. You know, and not only do we have to have the answers, we have to be able to work with the staff so that these things can be successfully implemented in the schools, in the space, with the students, with you as the parents. And so with that, I will say that the audit action plan is not the cure-all be-all, but it certainly is. It certainly is a big, huge step in the right direction for our community in Montgomery County Public Schools to be able to put action plans in place to address these exact accounts. And so as we develop these action plans, it has to be these vignettes that are shared tonight that address these very things to make sure that the action plans actually do get at the right issues to make the change. And, you know, I will never stand before you and say that we are perfect and we are not always in the process of continuous improvement. And I'm certainly not going to say that when we've been challenged with issues that we've never been challenged with in the way that we're challenged with them now. But we're going to come through it. And I have confidence in that because it is because of these types of situations that, yes, had negative impacts in so many different ways, but have to be shared so that we can continue to say, what are the systems that we have to build to avoid these happening? So when we presented the audit findings publicly to the Board of Education, I mean, one of the consultants that worked with us on the audit mentioned that it was very hard for them to share with us, you know, some of the beyond the findings and the recommendations that they made to us what works, because we were on the cutting edge of this and one of the first school systems to take a bite out of the apple to say, you know what, this is what we're going to do. So I say that to you because, again, not the all-in answer for everything that was shared, but certainly a big step in the right direction, which is why the Board of Education, myself as superintendent, have shown a consistent commitment to constantly coming back, looking at the action plans, working it through with the community so that we can all be a part of the solution. That's the thing. You know, as we understand the complexity of all of the problems through the different experiences that you shared tonight, we also at the same time have to be very solution oriented. And so, you know, as we come together and talk about these issues, I think it's important for us to come back and say, you know, what are the next steps and how do we involve you directly so that you can be a part of that? And I truly feel that for those in our community who come forward and say, you know, we want to be a part of the solution. How do we work with you? How do we do this? You know, they continue to show that. You continue to show that. So I look forward to us being able to continue to build those bridges. And again, coming back to the audit being a clear space of how we need to address some of these things that I hear you loud and clear that we know are impacting our students and our families as a result of lack of expectations for students, lack of cultural proficiency, lack of understanding, and growth. But again, I believe that the efforts that we put in place to build the capacity of the staff to do such is really important. There were some specific things that were mentioned tonight, and I know I don't know if it's worth our time to do this or if these are follow-up actions, but I do believe that there can be some opportunity to address some of the things that we have done to communicate and address safety and security. I feel like that's been a consistent focus, and we've talked about what are the immediate things that we've done to be very clear with our community, and then what is the long-term plans that we're working on so that we could share with our community what are the immediate changes they should expect to see in the schools, and then what we're still working on. So I'm happy for us to have staff be able to share that with you, as well as any general responses that the staff can continue to take back as we heard the accounts that were shared with us this evening. So would that be helpful?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. So let's start with two. Let's start with the issue of safety and security that was presented by Mr. Rivero in his last account. I will ask for Mr. Hall or any other staff. I'm sorry, I can't see who's on the screen, but you know who you are, who could share exactly what we've put in place for our short-term and long-term plan to address the safety issues. And I want to say long-term, this is going to continue to be a work in process. I wish I could say differently, but we are still working through an environment that is going to show the impact of COVID-19. Students being isolated, students coming back, developing norms of how they interact with one another, students having access to a number of different things that were not so accessible in our community prior to the pandemic. When I talk about that, I'm talking about weapons, I'm talking about drugs, and all of those pieces. So we've got to work on this in two ways consistently. What are we doing immediately, and what are we doing long term. And I'll also say that it's going to require the support of an entire community to help us implement that. So let's start with the safety and security piece, and I'll kick it over to the staff. And after that, I'm going to ask Ms. Blockner and Sonia Blockner and Nikki Hazel, if you could also share some of the specific things that we've learned from our recent CAL report around how we can better serve our English language learner students, because I think that's important to be able to share as we reflect on different practices moving forward.
Dr. McKnight, I'm happy to speak to summarize some of the work that we've been doing around safety and security. I'm not sure if other staff members are here, but I certainly can if you'd like me to. Okay, so I just want to share that we really have rallied over the last several weeks to respond to this issue, much in a similar approach that we had in the beginning of the year to some of the issues we were seeing at our Friday night football games. And we have reached out and done listening sessions and really trying to get to the root of the issue from the perspective of students and staff and certainly parents and with our principals. We dedicated an entire afternoon to this topic with all of our high school principals and every single one of our security team leaders at our recent administrative and supervisory meeting with all of our district leaders. We really broke down the priority challenge issues into several different areas, right? We broke it down. The first one was into really the increase that we're seeing in drug use and distribution, the increase in weapons and violence, right, that we're seeing between interpersonal conflicts with students. We then broke down a second challenge area on really what a lot of the issues that were brought forth today around hate bias, gender, racial issues, bullying, things of that nature. And then we really broke down the third area, or the next area rather, into attendance concerns that we have around students and either their lack of attendance or partial attendance during the day, and really overall engagement, student engagement. And really the role that a welcoming, safe, and warm and anti-racist school environment provides to bring students into the schoolhouse. We looked at operations, including hallways, bathrooms, trespassing concerns that we're seeing. And we looked at, again, we've been looking at these areas through a variety of lenses. So we're putting together really a kind of a comprehensive plan that involves some technical challenges, technical adaptions, as well as work with staff. And we are meeting with our high school principals on Friday of this week as one of our remaining steps before moving forward with this plan. So just kind of wanted to provide a snapshot of the work that's been done over the last several weeks, the stakeholder groups that we met with, the feedback that we have received, and some overview of the areas of focus that we are currently working on. There's much more to it, but that's kind of the quick and dirty.
Hello, everyone. This is Sandra Blotner, and I'm here on behalf of our DELME team. This is a Department of English Learners and Multilingual Education. And I was, again, listening to a lot of the comments about what our students are experiencing when they come into our schools, knowing that they need to have a program that gives them access to accelerated and enriched instruction. So one of the things that we've learned from the CAL report is where we are and the fact that we need to look at our processes so that students can have greater levels of access. So that's something that we will be working on in our action plan as a team to look at what does that look like at the elementary level so that students can access more gifted programs. And then what does it look like at the secondary level so students can access advanced courses? We do have a work group that is working together, multiple offices, at how we can ensure that more of our emergent multilingual learners are accessing advanced courses. So that's something that we're working on this year and will continue to work through as we move through several years. So we're setting goals for ourselves. We are also looking at what does the programming look like for students? How are they accessing content courses? How are we ensuring that the curriculum is fully aligned to grade level standard, and at the same time providing supports for students that may not be reading on grade level? So that's just some of the work that we're doing to address the needs of our students.
Thank you, Ms. Blottner. I also wanted to circle back. I know I wanted to circle back. I believe Ms. Stephanie Sharon is here. Getting to the solution-oriented and problem solving, I will continue to say this. It is about what we do together after this meeting. And I know that I have charged the staff with working through on community engagement and how we develop the action plans following from the anti-racist audit. That means that we have to rebuild systems and structures that we know don't work, whether it may be in how parents, we work with parents to engage, or we put systems in place as students transition from one school to the next, or from another state or another country to the next. Ms. Sharon, I'm going to ask you to speak to exactly how we are engaging community in developing these action plans that will that we will implement as a result of the anti-racist audit. And is there continued opportunity or where we are in the process for our parents to be involved specifically?
Thank you, Dr. McKnight. I'm going to start from the end and work my way back. So one thing that I want to be clear on, in order to really engage in an anti-racist approach to this action plan, the engagement with the community and the analysis of where we are at in the process needs to be continuous and ongoing. It's not going to be a one and done shop of stop. We have a plan and then we never come back to meet with the parents to talk to our community, to evaluate our progress and make adjustments along the way. So once the audit report got released on October 11th, we immediately began engaging in community conversations around the results to work on prioritizing with the community what their main areas they would like to start with around the audit, where some of those quick wins would be. And then we also identified and worked with the community through these 16 community conversations that we have engaged in around co-constructing a theory of action around how we are going to address this 6 domains. All of the information that was collected both through the audit as well as the community conversations that we have unpacked are now being used by a variety of different work groups that are in existence to address the 6 domains of the audit and address the specific findings and recommendations therein. So while we had the community conversations component of engagement, that is not the only way we're engaging with our community as we develop the action plan. We have the Anti-Racist Audit Steering Committee that meets monthly and is comprised of both students, community, families, and staff. And they have really served as an advisory group along the way to help us gain feedback and input on the development of the anti-racist audit process. So while the audit, something that Dr. McKnight said I think is really critical to understand is that it's not just about putting in particular actions. There's short-term wins, there's long-term wins, but we have to be, building the capacity of all of our staff, students and community along the way. So while we are working on the specific action plan that's addressing each actions in each of the 6 domains that's going to be presented to the board on May 11th, there is work actively happening right now. For instance, there is professional learning that is being launched for all 800 administrators, both school-based and central office leaders, on how to address some of the cross-domain recommendations and findings that came out of the audit. That is just one example of work that is currently underway. And all of the offices have also engaged in a retreat to start unpacking and action planning what parts of the audit directly align and are addressed with their work so that they can identify actions that are going to address this as part of the larger comprehensive plan. We're also working with school-based administrators, and not only in just professional learning, but analyzing their individual school-based reports, how they align with their school improvement planning process, and how to engage their community with these results in a culturally responsive way so that they can actually work with their community in order to really create change at the school level. So that's just some high level information about what's happening right now and how we're engaging our community.
Thank you, Ms. Sharon, for that. So I asked just for a couple of more minutes, and then I know we'll let everyone go because it's late, but I did want to circle back to our safety and security conversation. I understand that our Chief of Operations have joined us and our Chief Operating Officer, Ms. Edwards and Mr. Hall. So any comments that you'd like to make, please feel free to share at this time. And I also know that we have Ms. Vicki Parkan on the line as well, who is happy to share anything in addition that you think is necessary as relates to EML support.
Great. Thank you, Dr. McKnight. So I think that Mr. Monteleone did a pretty good job of summing it up. And so I'll just add a couple more pieces. We will be sending out, we're meeting, as Damon said, we're meeting with the principals on Friday morning, and then we'll be sending out a comprehensive communication Friday afternoon that will be highlighting all of the actions that we have taken already. And then, as Dr. McKnight noted, the ones that we have planned for the medium and the long term. And so, you know, this is a top concern, a top priority for all of us at MCPS. Safety and security is the responsibility of every adult in the district. And it's one of the things that we take, you know, absolutely seriously. And so what you'll see on Friday are a list of immediate actions, short-term actions, and then some longer-term actions that we're going to be taking. Some of it will be around the bathrooms, but we're also doing a significant listening tour with our students, our staff, to make sure that in addition to addressing the immediate safety concerns within our schools, that we're really getting to the root cause of, you know, what is causing this, and how we can support our students to make sure that they are, you know, engaging in a safe and healthy learning environment every day when they come to school. So I will stop there and see if Ms. Edwards has anything that she would like to add in addition.
Everyone, I hope you are, good evening, everyone. I hope you are doing well. Hopefully you can hear me. I had a little bit of lag there. And thank you, Mr. Hall. And I just wanted to be able to share. I wanted to thank you, one, for raising the concerns. Safety and security, it speaks to students' well-being. When we want our students to come to school, we want them to be in an environment where they feel comfortable, they can learn, and they can work with one another. And so as we have really taken the time to really stop at this point, Mr. Hall talked about just the opportunity to be able to engage and really get the feedback in order to build out. But for right now, some of the critical spaces that we will definitely focus on, one of the spaces that we do know and that has come up over the last couple of weeks has really been around the restroom support and monitoring. And so as we have come to this point, we are really thinking about those immediate actions in terms of moving forward. One critical space is we've taken the opportunity to really standardize the approach in terms of just the work our security staff does within the building, where they stand, building the relationships with students, how they work with one another, and where they are during transitions of class. What we know is important is that when our students are walking through the hallway, that our staff need to be present, they need to communicate with them, and they need to be seen. For our restrooms, one of the critical spaces, and I know that this has been a conversation point, is really thinking about the monitoring of those restrooms. And during the day, there are key times during the day when staff will be checking our restrooms. We really place a lot of emphasis on right after classes begin, in between classes, at the end of the day, and during extracurricular activities, where our security staff will be moving throughout our buildings, moving into the restrooms, announcing themselves and going in and really seeing and making sure and seeing how things are and making sure that things are okay. We see that as a really critical point. and really standardizing that across the district to really create an opportunity to really enhance the level of safety that our students feel, and to really acknowledge and know and try to figure out the things that are happening and really put a stop to some of the things that may be happening within our restrooms. Another key point is within our high schools, one of the opportunities that we have had is really looking at really trying to understand what the security allocations are and really taking the time to think about, if we're going to allocate additional security for the coming year, what is the criteria that we use, and really being planful and mindful around that as we seek feedback from people to build that out. All of our high schools have received an additional substitute teacher to be within the schools and become a part of their school community as an additional person to be available to be out in the hallways to support some of the classes that may need a substitute teacher and provide an additional person within the building. And so what will happen in the coming weeks, one of the critical components is we will create a safety and security advisory team that will work with us throughout the year to really be able to create solutions that will be impactful across the district, that will also take into account the different experiences of students, staff, as well as families, as we really build out a collaborative and cohesive approach to continue throughout the year. And so as we do this, we will continue to bring those highlights back, but this does remain a top priority for us as a district.
So thank you. I just want to acknowledge the level of frustration in the chat and the text that at least I am getting. We understand that everything we want to do takes planning, but people are suffering today. So there's a few low-hanging fruits that could be taken advantage of. One of the biggest issues is that parents just do not know how to, and this, Dr. McKnight, was something that was addressed at a forum that we had with you a year ago or so. Parents don't know who to call because lots of doors are closed for them. So I just want to acknowledge the level of frustration, and at the same time appreciate your, Dr. McKnight, time and your team's time. And I know that this is been accumulating over years, no? But it's getting to a point where people are desperate. So we really welcome the opportunity for MCPS to work with the community in seizing short-term opportunities and also working together on long-term ones. I also highly encourage you to read the recommendations that you asked us to submit to you more than a year ago about how the MCPS could become a more culturally responsive and anti-racist system, because these recommendations were worked on with the community. And one of the key issues is that people need to understand that they're being heard. And by having so many doors that where people are able to or are not able to, the doors are there, but if you cannot open, they don't matter. And they feel trapped and they don't know what to do with the anxiety that they have and with the problems that they encounter. I'm just trying to talk about what I see on the chat and what's happening here. So we really appreciate the willingness to work on changing things, understand that you and your team have inherited things that have accumulated over years, but let's truly try to work on short-term solutions that might mitigate some of the problems the challenges that our families are facing, understanding that there will always be room for improvement on the long term.
Thank you again. As Diego said, Dr. McKnight, I want to thank all of your team here. This has been a rather long and emotional experience. I know there's a lot of follow-up. I know Diego and I will see you tomorrow at the board meeting, and certainly we would, after we've had a chance to maybe decompress from all of what we heard, we should talk about how do we get some of these low-hanging fruits moving. For those audience that have hung in here, thank you again for extending your time with us this evening. I do want to, we do have a in-person planned event coming up with the Black and Brown Coalition on May 4th. So save a date for that. And we look forward to having continuing conversation. Again, thank you for a long day and for hanging in with us. And we will be following up with you and all of our guests. We hope we can get the answers to questions in the chat back to people also.
So I just wanted to end by saying, yes, as always, we will follow up and send the responses back because we want to be responsive to our community. So we will absolutely do that as we always have. I also challenge us to continue to talk about, well, first, let me say we have a commitment to work with the Black and Brown Coalition. I think the next step in working through all the challenges that were described tonight, I think our next step has to be having an understanding of what that collaboration looks like and being very transparent with our family community in our efforts, our attempts to, and the work that we do to share how we're making progress. And I think I think that's our next step of work, and I just believe that that's a critical follow-up for MCPS as well as it is for the coalition. So I do look forward to that. I thank you so much for the conversation tonight. I'd like to thank the staff for coming on and being part of the discussion and our next level of work that I know that we will continue to engage in together on behalf of our students. Thank you so much.
Thank you again.
Buenas noches, good night, and thank you everyone for your patience. We'll continue to work together to make things better.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.